moving into another interview with the CEO of Knightscope, Bill Lee. We're going to bring him on and get started. Bill, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
I'm all right, Michael. Have you any idea what time it is out here? Like, I got chickens out here complaining.
We got you up early. I know you're on the West Coast. We're starting early, but we are really, really excited to have you guys here. It's always great to talk to you guys over on the Knightscope team. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. You guys have some really exciting stuff going on. Really quickly, before we get into these bigger announcements and the bigger developments, for anybody who doesn't know in our audience, which probably isn't going to be more than a handful of people by now, give us a quick overview of Knightscope and what the company's all about.
Sure. We build fully autonomous security robots, and our crazy mission is to see if we can make the United States of America the safest country in the world by giving the million officers and the million guards really smart eyes and ears and tools for them to do their jobs much more effectively. It's a unique combination of four really difficult technologies: autonomous self-driving technology, like a self-driving car, robotics, AI, and electric vehicles, all molded into one. And we've been operating from Hawaii through Texas to Rhode Island. We've done actually more than 1.5 million hours out in the field, and got a lot of crime fighting wins, so we're pretty excited.
Fantastic. All right, Bill, a lot of exciting stuff to cover here. Let's get into it. We recently had a very unique opportunity to go to an undisclosed location, do some on-the-ground content with Knightscope during your roadshow, where you guys were traveling around, meeting with different companies and organizations. What kind of an update can you give us on that roadshow? How is everything going? What kind of progress did you see there?
Roadshow, we're on a roll. I think we've done 45 pod landings, meaning we brought this, I call it a robot aquarium. We got a bunch of robots stuck in a big pod that's getting trucked around the country. I think we've hit 16 states plus Washington, D.C., and it's going much better than honestly I'd expected. When I brought this up to the team last year, hey, like we should do this crazy thing, and they're like, you're out of your mind. This will never work, and we got it working. It's interesting. It's really good to do a virtual webinar. I mean, you can Zoom people to death and PowerPoint them to death and a bunch of videos and everything. But at the end of the day, most people, especially if it's something brand new that no one's ever seen in the history of mankind, like they want to come and touch, see, and feel. And that's always really good to do that on a virtual demo beforehand, and then have them come visit us in the pod with the decision makers. So it's nice to not nice to see you or nice to meet you the first time. It's nice to see you again, as we discussed, and it's been really helpful from a client development standpoint. And now it's even odder. Like we're getting requests for people to host the Robot Roadshow. I'm a little giddy. I think next Friday we're supposed to have it over at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. So that's going to be a little bit surreal, but things are going rather well.
That's fantastic. I remember one of the things that myself and my team commented on and were really impressed by when we were on the ground at the roadshow was just the unmet needs that these robots are addressing. And I kind of want to dig into that a little bit more. We had a chance to talk about it when we did our interview on the ground. But when you're talking to these decision makers and the people that are coming to the roadshow, what kind of feedback are you getting from them about the needs that these robots are meeting that they're not getting met right now with current security systems?
Across the spectrum, I think it's not enough eyes, ears, and just resources to secure their facilities properly. We just deployed at a school. We've got a second school coming up. Just having additional capabilities for the officers and guards to do their jobs more effectively, as we often say. I think second is just the unemployment levels or inability to attract resources and talent to actually fill positions. I think those are primarily the two things, or three. They literally have way too much criminal activity. If you go to Knightscope.com, on our homepage now, you'll see a few testimonials. One of our clients is experiencing multiple vehicle thefts a day, and now they're down to de minimis amounts over a month. And so we've continued to see a lot of positive impact. So we know the technology is working.
Outstanding. Bill, glad to hear the roadshow is going well. There's a lot of exciting other stuff on the horizon for you guys, though, and things you're working on right now. Let's talk about a massive development you guys had recently. You just issued a press release about the in-process stage you've achieved for the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. Give us the details on what makes this such a big deal.
So we're 17, 18 months into a 2-year daunting nightmare cybersecurity review process with the U.S. federal government. We've put in a massive amount of resources, a couple of teammates on the verge of collapse trying to get all this stuff done. We finally got all our submissions in, all the initial audits and everything else, and a lot of favorable remarks from the federal government. We're really excited about it. Our sponsors, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and once we have a contract already with the federal government, we can't perform on it until we get this ATO or authority to operate. But then now that we've got at this stage, we can really start having some more formal dialogue with organizations across the federal government where we know we can be helpful.
Outstanding. And obviously, from a business perspective, I would imagine, and you obviously kind of referenced this already, but I would imagine a classification like this probably opens a lot of new doors, right? A lot of new opportunities for the company moving forward with partnerships.
Yes, and a lot of folks we mention the federal government, they're like, oh, you're gonna help the military police, better secure an Air Force base or something, or military base or something like that. And yes, that is an opportunity. We're not going to be on the battlefield. There's plenty of support for the soldiers. What we really need to do is support the officers and guards on our own homeland. But then you start just wandering around and just thinking about, hey, I wonder how many warehouses FEMA has, right? I wonder if the Customs and Border Patrol folks could use some additional eyes and ears and voice on the ground. I wonder who secures NASA. The GSA, or effectively the landlord for the federal government or portions of it, they manage 10,000 buildings. The Federal Protective Services has 15,000 officers and guards helping protect those 10,000 buildings. They could use a helping hand. Veterans Affairs. Let's see, I think the Chief Security Officer has on the order of 140 plus police departments he's trying to manage, and there's just not enough resources. So I'm really excited about this. Long term, this is going to be extremely helpful to the country and all those federal folks that need additional support. So there's a very, very positive long-term growth opportunity here.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to take a second just to kind of reflect and have you give us your perspective on this. But at the time of that press release, only 262 ATOs, or authority to operates, have been issued, and 83 companies have reached this in-process stage. What do you think that says about Knightscope and what you guys have accomplished and how far you've come?
It says we're dedicated to the mission. I mean, it is 7 figures worth of expenditure and then ongoing expenditure to maintain the ATO. I also think it says that the federal government is very, very serious about cybersecurity and cybersecurity threats. They're not just allowing anyone to sell into the federal government. And I think as you look at Knightscope, we've got a lot of experience out in the field, starts building a little bit of a moat. Our technology is getting better and better and better, start building a little bit of a moat. You start getting, that level of support from big players like the federal government. It's not an easy thing to just turn on to do business at that level. And I think that moat starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're really excited about the future.
Awesome. Yeah, not a doubt there's a lot more exciting stuff to come. We have a question from our audience. Rita was asking about elementary school security. Obviously, a very, very prescient topic right now. There's horrible news coming out with the recent developments that we've had. When you're looking at school security, how can the robots, if in any way, impact the security that we have in the schools for our kids? Is this something where we can make an impact with Knightscope robots?
I'm going to answer that 2 different ways. So how you would quickly do it just from a technical standpoint, in a lot of cases, most security professionals know that the layered effect is one of the best ways to do this. So you probably want a K5 or multiple K5s outside patrolling, a K3 on every floor, a K1 at every ingress egress point for people and vehicles. And then you'd want to treat the school like a data center. Just lock it down and whitelist all the folks that are authorized to be there, meaning the kids, the students, the parents, and the faculty. And unless you're on that list, you shouldn't be on that, and we should send up a flag if you're not on that list. Like, hey, I don't know where that license plate came from, raise the flag. I haven't seen that profile pic before, raise a flag. This mobile device has never been on campus, raise a flag. And that way you can better almost digitally lock down the place as well as provide some physical security. The more horrifying part of the conversation is our country basically can't pay our awesome teachers properly. In a lot of cases, schools don't have enough resources to actually do the curriculum. So it becomes a massive budget problem, and where is the money coming from? We've got a few ideas on how to address that. It's not an overnight solution. We're working on it. We have a couple contracts with schools. I think there might be a few more in the pipeline, but this is kind of require a whole of community, a whole of private sector, and a whole of government kind of approach in order to really address the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of in a similar vein, right? Again, when our team was on the ground at the Roadshow, we had an incredible experience getting up close and personal with the robots and seeing what they function like in person. Let's talk about some of the other applications where these robots can go. We talked about casinos. We talked about different standstill places where you're just collecting data. What are some of the biggest avenues where these robots function well and some of the biggest places that these are needed?
Hospitals run 24/7. Casinos, as you mentioned, run 24/7. We're actually seeing a lot of interest on residential side of things, apartment complexes. Certainly, we'll continue with major corporations and corporate campuses. We landed our first power utility company with, I think they started with about 5 machines. Better securing the grid is an important kind of national issue. Manufacturing facilities, logistics facilities, retail. I think it's basically anywhere indoors or outdoors, primarily outdoors, where you might see a guard or an officer patrolling is absolutely an opportunity for Knightscope to help.
Fantastic. Okay, another thing that we talked about when we were at the Roadshow, the product development side I'd like to get into a little bit as well, but the maintenance of these robots is something we discussed as well. We were really impressed by the self-charging stations. These things kind of return to charge and power themselves back up. But when it comes to maintaining these things, repairs, if something goes wrong or they break down, how does your team address those? Do you come and service them? What's the maintenance side of the robots like?
Yeah, so it's a subscription service. We don't sell the robots outright. So we have a staff that runs 24/7, 365, monitoring the machines in network and making sure they're all nice and healthy and charging and getting software upgrades or hardware upgrades. So we're on it 24/7 with our clients down our throat 24/7, making sure everything's running. And most of the time, 90+% of the time, if something goes wrong, we can remotely over the air fix it. At times when needed, we can dispatch a technician on the ground there to do whatever else might be needed from a physical standpoint. But yeah, we're absolutely responsible. And think of it almost like Verizon or AT&T having to make sure the network is up and running. We're having to literally do the same.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. The product development side, let's cover that a little bit. Looking at what you guys have already, the K5, the K3, all of the other products you've got on the market now, what are you guys planning in terms of the future? To the extent that you can talk about it, is there anything else exciting coming up that we should have our eyes out on?
Well, I think the first thing that we're excited about the engineering side of things is recruiting awesome talent. I think cross-functionally across the entire organization, we now have teammates across about 15 states. We kind of double the size of the team. Likely over the next couple of years, we're going to triple the size of the team. And folks in the tech sector are talking about layoffs and all this other stuff. Like, we're hiring. So if you're a patriot, an awesome technologist, a sales executive, go to Knightscope.com, go to the careers page. We've got plenty of openings. I think from a product technology standpoint, there are maybe some back office stuff that we need to be doing. There's a lot of technology that, hey, works for 20 robots, 50 robots, 100 robots, but you start getting to 200, 300, 500, 5,000, like this process or this technology architecture is not going to work. So we're kind of doing a lot of re-architecting, re-engineering. I think from a client-facing standpoint, we've announced that we'll be sending out a K1 hemisphere sometime this year. This is a much smaller form factor of our stationary unit that we've already got a lot of interest for. So we're kind of wrapping up the final phases of that. And then also this year, we'll be releasing the 5th generation K5, which is our most popular model with a bunch of upgrades and changes in architecture. As I mentioned, we've done this for a very long time, and we've learned a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. So we want to make sure that we continue to improve the technology. So we're pretty excited. We're all kind of in good spirits and a little bit on a roll here.
Absolutely. We love to hear that. You talked a little bit about the subscription service, right? They're not selling them outright. Are there plans to sell these outright in the future? Is it going to continue to remain a subscription service? What's the plan with the sales side of the business?
Subscription is one, highly lucrative, and then highly cost effective for the client. So price point, you're not going to walk into a client who's nickel and diming literally a guarding service and say, hey, you need to pay six figures for something like that. It's not going to work. Second, we've got intellectual property that we want to make sure we control. Second, we release new software every 2 weeks, new hardware every 3, 6, 9 months, and the technology just keeps getting upgraded and and you don't want to sell something to a client that's not going to be relevant or viable in 6 or 9 or 12 months. And then there's obviously the cybersecurity threat. We want to make sure that everything's under our supervision. So it is not in the works ever to do anything outside of a subscription model, especially if we can return some pretty handsome margins for our investors.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And when you're talking about the margins a little bit, again, to the extent that you can talk on that, can you talk about the margin on these robots from creation to the subscription and any time to actually do the ROI on these robots after they've been created?
Yeah, I had one of the most positive calls with a very important client of ours yesterday, and he's just so excited about the ROI on his end. Forget the company, like the actual positive impact we can make on the client side, and he just basically, this is not only phenomenal but just a no-brainer. But for us, crudely speaking, the machines will generate $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on average, because we got multiple different kinds of machines. And we try to recover the cost of the machine in the first calendar year. We do have a financing facility to make sure from a cash flow standpoint we're okay to do that. Second, third, fourth, fifth year, you're not having to build a machine again, right? So now you're kind of printing money. You have to make sure to focus on lowering and improving the operating costs. So as the technology gets better, the quality and reliability improve and everything else, those numbers start coming down. So net, you're kind of like, I don't know, you're buying a new Tesla every year, but your margins look like a software as a service company in the 55, 60, 65% kind of range, and that's why things look kind of interesting and exciting for us over the long term.
Outstanding. Okay, we'll talk about the shareholder meeting coming up in just a minute, but first, let's talk through a little bit more broadly the plan for the rest of 2022. Where's the focus at for the business? What are you guys planning on expanding? And what are some of your biggest shots on goal throughout the rest of the year?
A lot of what we talked about, growth, Robot Roadshow, get the K1 Hemisphere out, get the 5th generation K5 out, some blocking and tackling, finish off if possible, getting the ATO with the federal government, and then kind of in my spare time, because I've got nothing else to do, we're always, as we've mentioned, as part of the public listing earlier this year, looking at mergers and acquisitions and kind of seeing what might be interesting for us. So we're out quietly hunting a little bit too.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a unique point. Obviously, you probably can't go too in depth into your strategy there. But when it comes to mergers and acquisitions, what kind of company, in a broad sense, would make sense for Knightscope? What are you guys kind of looking at as a target, if you can talk about that?
I think broadly speaking, there's probably 1, 2, 3, or 4 characteristics we're looking for. Anything from a technology standpoint that can help our clients and improve the technology portfolio. Is certainly of interest to us. On the revenue growth side of things, especially if there's some cross-selling or complementary opportunities, or something we can put on the Robot Roadshow to come along with us, is helpful. Talent, finding the right people with the right skill mix and the right mindset that are relentless and are really focused on the mission is important. And I think lastly, not as important, but something we would weigh in is on facilities. Obviously, we're growing and growing, and we're going to outgrow our facilities soon. So we're kind of starting to contemplate, what we might do next year.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about the upcoming shareholder meeting, June 23rd. Why is this going to be so significant? We've obviously got
It's
a lot
going to
of
be
people
a
looking forward to it.
snoozer. We're just going to do the formalities and just, all in favor, aye, and all that good stuff. No, just kidding. We're eternally grateful for all the investor support we have had over the years that got us to this point. I always often say, join us and be a force for good. Our investors are that force for good. We try to, put in some extra effort to make it an enjoyable, informative, and hopefully invigorating session. I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's like the 23rd at 9 a.m. or something like that, Pacific. And we might have an announcement or two or a couple goodies to share. But we hope people will certainly tune in and kind of talk about the future. I think probably the context will be something along the lines of, it's been a long first chapter to just get to this point. We've had now the most amount of resources we've ever had in the history of the company. We've got the technology working. We've got clients across the country. We're an awesome team, and let's talk about the future. And that's kind of primarily the emphasis.
Awesome. Very excited for that. Obviously going to be tuning in and listening. Let's talk as we close about evaluating the company from a retail investor perspective, right? When you look at this from the business side of things, the future of the company, the potential that this business concept has, what would you want to tell a retail investor about the business and the investment side of where this company's going?
Same thing I've often said for almost the last decade. It's three things, real simple. Do you believe that autonomous kind of pretty stable, let's put it that way. So if you've got a solution that can address that marketplace on a recurring societal problem with recurring revenue, you got to really look at it. And then lastly, you're betting on a team. And this is the same management team that willed this company against all odds into existence. And the likelihood that you're able to found a company, get it funded, grow it, and go list it on NASDAQ, I mean, you're kind of in lottery category statistics. It's unlikely to happen. We are determined and relentless. We've got the skills, the people, and the resources to execute, and we're going to force this to happen. So we'll hope, as I often say, join us and be a force for good.
Awesome. Bill, all great stuff. Before we let you go, I've got to ask you, what does the busiest man in the business do for fun? When do you even have time for fun? Every time I talk to you, you're in the middle of 1,000 different things. What do you do for fun if and when you get some spare time on your hands?
Knightscope is fun for me. Like this, you got to be a little bit of a lunatic to found a company or even do what we're doing. So as my wife often says, you're possessed. And that's all I kind of think about. I've been picking up the guitar again. So my neighbors are kind of really happy about that. Just mostly pick up the guitar a little bit, but running 24/7, Knightscope. I mean, that's all I want to do. That's kind of where I spend all my time. Even when I'm watching a movie, I'm like, oh, that's a cool surface treatment, or that was an interesting font, or we could use that with the company. I should talk to Michael about that. I'm living what I want to be. I'm doing what I want to be doing, and that most investors should really kind of consider that. My entire net worth is in Knightscope. We're going to force a victory here, and we've often now been announcing pretty consistently, almost every single week, one or two major growth opportunities for the company. We're going to continue that. So we're kind of on a roll, and we'll appreciate all the continued support.
Awesome. Bill, we cannot wait to see what comes next. Always fun talking to you, and always a great time to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Good to see you.